Good morning, everyone. My name is James Hunt. I'm the chair of the IoD in Oxfordshire. So you've just been listening to Nikki Holt, and just to mention that Nikki is Managing Director of Sophie Enterprises, which is a new not-for-profit organisation looking to help the IoD develop its relationships in the local community in Oxfordshire. So we're into week 5 of lockdown, and it can be a frightening time, we think, and cash flow is obviously critically important. We've had 2 of these webinars so far. The first one was on business rescues and turnarounds. Last week was on furlough agreements and the job retention scheme. So just share the screen with you all. So the Institute of Directors has on its coat of arms integrity and enterprise. And later in this presentation, we will just say a few words about the founder of the Institute, a gentleman called Sir John Lubbock. But it's now my pleasure to introduce, it's not working. I find the PowerPoint sometimes forecasting and cash management in a COVID-stricken world. So we have 3 panelists today. We have Ian Woollard. Give us a wave, Ian, if everyone can see Ian.
An actual wave or
well, either, both. We then have Carl Tomlinson. Carl, give us a wave.
I'll wave with both hands.
We have Amanda Webb. Now, Amanda is accompanied by Henry, potentially, her young son. Is Amanda
in and out?
He may have words of wisdom for us.
Children often do.
They do.
So the way this is going to work, we're first of all going to have an interview session with each of our 3 panelists, where I'm going to ask them to give us their 2 golden nuggets, the things that they think are really important for you in terms of financial forecasting and cash flow management. At around 10:25, we're going to have breakout sessions. So Nikki Holt will press the button and you'll be divided automatically. I think we're going to go for 3 breakout rooms, Nikki.
That's right. And, but I'll explain a little bit more just before we get sent in.
And what you will have the opportunity as a group to then do is to come up between yourselves with what you believe are your burning issue. And you've got to appoint a spokesman in your group, and then we'll all come back together. The spokesman will have the opportunity to ask your question, your group question, to the panelists. Now, just before we come back in, the chat lines will be open and you've got the opportunity to ask questions from the floor. So if you've got a burning question that hasn't been put forward by the spokesman, do have an opportunity to put that on the chat line. And that's pretty much it. So that leads me. Can everyone see that one?
No. Do all our attendees know who the panel are, other than just our
so
names?
I'm about to introduce you.
Okay, sorry, James.
So, first, Mr. Ian Woollard. Now, I have known Ian for about 13 years. And the first time I really got to know him was in 2008. I was reminding myself, which of course was the time of the last crisis in the financial world. And Ian at that time was working for an organisation called Shaw Gibbs, and they were rather quiet in their corporate finance team. So Ian ended up coming along to my offices and we struck up a friendship. And over the years, I've discovered that Ian is a rather unusual accountant. So he's a great systems man. He loves numbers. He loves also accounting standards and tax, and he's also passionate about his clients' affairs. So, Ian, over to you.
Thank you very much, James. That makes me sound like a right laugh, doesn't it? Okay, do you want to just go on to the next slide then? Because I'll try and keep my golden nuggets as brief as I possibly can. Okay, so when I think cash flow, I think there's 2 different types of cash flow. There's the one that's the real one, and that's the one that is actually going to cause you to make decisions in your business. that needs to be done from whoever actually controls the cash in your business. So that might be your managing director, it might be your financial controller, it might be your bookkeeper, it might be yourself. My advice on that one is keep that one informal. Devise something on Excel that makes sense to you. I've built one that actually links to the sort of Xero dashboard so that we keep it relevant to the actual ledger balances, but that's just a technical thing. And the frequency of that one, you want to do that at least once a week. And actually, this advice is for advice all of the time, not just now. This is also relevant when your business is flying and growing. So that cash flow is very, very different to the one then in the next column, which is all about the sort of funding and strategic and project-led purpose. Now, the people who need to do that tend to be the directors and professional advisors, and it's only because it's a bit more formal. It's generally written for potentially shareholders, other directors, but in the main it's going to be for banks and equity raises. So it just has to come, it's just got to be in a bit more formal basis. The frequency of that, obviously you've got to do one every year, I would say, at a bare minimum, or then project based. So right now it could be that business wants some funding, some comfort in the current climate. So when it comes to the formal cash flow, most accountants will have some sort of software that we use, and that's great because it produces very professional looking output. But my top tips for when you have to do this for a bank are make sure you've got the up-to-date accounts filed. The other top tip is put a business review in your accounts. I can't stress the importance of telling the story around the numbers, because whilst I like the numbers, but the numbers just tell me things that are happening about the business, and it's your job as directors to tell that story to whoever's going to be reading your accounts. In the actual cash flow, you've got to list the key assumptions. I always like to include last year's budget to last year's actual, because what that will do is that will demonstrate how good you are at predicting your own business. And I think that's probably the best advice I can give. So it's going to be the business review and include last year's actuals to budget. So you're demonstrating that you really do understand your business. And they're my little golden nuggets in this very stressful time.
Lovely, thank you, Ian. Now, just before I introduce Carl, can I just ask Carl, did you want to take control of the?
I'll share my slides. I'll share my slides.
Right. So just before you do, let me introduce Carl to everyone. So, Carl, am I allowed to tell everyone, Carl, how you and I first met?
As long as it's true.
It was a village hall, and Carl was playing René in Allo Allo. And you know, when you go to an amateur dramatic thing, you think, oh my God, is this going to be any good? Well, I have to say, Carl was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It was the most wonderful performance. Anyway, I've introduced Carl to two of my clients, both tricky shareholder disputes. One would certainly have gone into administration only a month ago had it not been for Carl's wisdom. So my words for Carl: commercially shrewd, kind, emotionally detached, and very good with numbers. Carl, over to you.
Thank you, James. Okay, so in terms of how we might go about planning in changing times like this, the two keys, I think, to effective planning are achieving certainty and maintaining flexibility. And they're supported by our ability to recognize uncertainty and our ability to employ creativity. So I want to talk first about the certainty-uncertainty piece. And I want to get my next slide up, and I can't. Here we are. This is the typical business trading cycle. You'll all be familiar with this, how the cash runs around your business. And if we can think of this as like the blood running through an organism, And in times of crisis, we want to make sure the blood's not bleeding out. We want to make sure the blood pressure's kept low, literally and metaphorically. Or you can think about it as the fuel in your car. The red lights come on, you've got 50 miles to the next petrol station. What you're going to do, you're going to turn the aircon off, you're going to use the gears carefully, you're going to slow down. So you can pick your way through these aspects of your working capital flow and think about what you can be certain about, the behavior of your creditors, your debtors, and your bank, and really nail that down. And then what you're uncertain about, you have to put to one side and monitor it. Nail the certainty, park the uncertainty, monitor the uncertainty, because it will over time become certain. Then we need to think creatively. So what are the influences on your cash flow and what can you do about them? The first thing I would say here is engage your whole team. Make sure that everyone who's got a view on your business is helping you to do this. And maybe go outside as well. Think about your accountant. Think about a coach, if necessary, who can help you ask the tough questions, who can guide you through your thinking. So once you've nailed your certainty by planning what you know, once you've parked your uncertainty, which you're going to monitor because certainty will arrive, once you've engaged your creativity by getting help and asking yourself the tough questions, now you're in a position to be flexible. And what I would say here is most of us plan, as Ian's discussed, over a long period. We plan a yearly budget, which then becomes a quarterly review. We might have a 3-year business plan based on really good assumptions at the beginning of year 1, which we know by the end of year 2 are going to become invalid assumptions. So what I would say here is be ready to be wrong. And think of that 3-year plan as maybe a 3-week plan or a 3-month plan. Be happy to go back to it. Be happy to replan. Nail the certainty, remain flexible, and you'll have a plan which I hope sees you and your business through these difficult times.
Lovely. Carl, was that you done? Right,
Yes.
now someone needs to mute, I think. Someone's having fun. So I'm just trying to see if we can see someone who's not muted, who should be. Can anyone see that they've got some noise in the background?
It's
No,
done.
seems it wasn't Henry.
No, it wasn't Henry. I know, I can tell who it was, but I'm not going to share because it's not fair.
You're not going to share, right? Lovely. So it's my pleasure. Now, thank you, Carl. That was really interesting. I like your quiet tone. It's absolutely what you need in a crisis. So, Amanda. Now, I met Amanda for the first time. Amanda, by the way, runs a virtual finance director operation and is also founder of a charity called Rockpool. Now, I met Amanda at the IoD in Blenheim, and I'd got a really difficult case at the moment, a botched vendor-funded management buyout, not one I'd done, I hasten to add, and a gentleman who was ostensibly the managing director of this company had had a severe mental breakdown and he had been sectioned. And I was sharing with Amanda this tragic story, and I found I could talk easily to Amanda, and she was revelatory about her understanding of numbers and people and the challenges we all have through life. So, Amanda, what are your golden nuggets for us this morning?
Thanks, James. So I'm actually going to move away from numbers because what is also critical here is that as business leaders and as company owners, we need to make sure that we have the tools in our toolbox to remain resilient during this time, because this is obviously a time of great anxiety for many, many people. And cash is something that can always be quite emotive. And it's one of the things that I've found professionally through my accountant's hat that a lot of business owners lose sleep over. So what I'd like to do is give you a couple of golden nuggets around resilience, so that you can find your way to staying strong during this period and focused. So to echo a little bit about that Carl has raised, you can't be everything to everyone, and that's one of the first things to remember. So the thing here is, how do you know which bits to pick and which bits to drop? So in order to understand where you put your focus, it's important to identify your personal values, your personal why. So why am I doing something? Why am I prioritizing this thing over that? What is my purpose? You need to understand your sense of purpose. And if you understand your values, your why, your purpose, you'll then understand your intention as well for your actions. And through those, understanding that piece, you'll be able to clarify where your focus needs to go. So you'll be able to easily say yes to this thing or no to that thing. Yes, I can help with that today. No, I can't help with that today. And so you can very easily start to filter out the bits that are taking away your energy, taking away your focus, and very easily start to focus on the things that actually are going to move things forward, and do that without that sense of guilt, because you've understood your values, your why, your sense of purpose, and everything is aligned. If everything is aligned, you are able to validate your direction. The other thing which I think is really important, and sometimes this can take a little while, a little practice, there are no positives and there are no negatives. There just is. Something just is. It's not a positive thing or a negative thing. The reason people might think this is a bit of a sensitive comment at the moment, but the reason people make something positive or negative is because it's human nature to label things. So we tend to label something, and then as soon as we label something positive or negative, we've attached an emotion to it. If we attach an emotion to it, our emotions start to actually manage us and our response to that thing. If we can just label it as just is, we remove the pressure of that emotion, and we can actually have a very clear focus and a steady response to how we want to treat that thing, because it just is. It's not positive, it's not negative, it's not creating that emotion. I just need to deal with it, and that will help you focus on and move forward with any challenges that you come across as well. The last, I know this is 3 nuggets, but the last one, James.
Yeah, 3's nice.
3.
We like 3.
It's really simple. One is, resilience is about picking yourself up, brushing yourself off, and moving forward. And I know James loves his quote, so I'm going to leave this with a quote, which is Edison, which is, "I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that don't work."
Lovely. Thank you very much. That was brilliant, Amanda. Now, if I'm going to use this, can I? Oh. Now, how do I get off that spotlight? Can someone? Oh, yeah, review. So is that off spotlight? Yeah.
No, it's just on you now.
Just spotlight.
You've got a big you, James.
A big you, really? A big me?
Yeah.
Can I take it off? How do I take it off spotlight? I'm going to leave Nikki to work out how to take it off spotlight whilst I carry on. So that was all very interesting, and that comment about self-validation, Amanda, I think is so true. I'm going to share with everyone on the 6th of May the challenges I had from January 2019 to September 2019. And the biggest challenge for me as I struggled with my own business was feeling I was staying true to myself. And it's really difficult when you've got difficult decisions to make. Anyway, so now we're soon going to be at the breakout session, which is where I remind myself and everyone else of the golden shot. Now, hands up, who remembers Bob Monkhouse and the golden shot? Emojis. I always get emojis and emojis wrong. So there aren't that many people who remember the golden shot, so I'll have to remind myself. So the way it worked was this, and this is, I think, quite an apt metaphor for where we are now, because lots of people in business running companies are blindfolded. So the way the golden shot worked, right at the end of the program, the contestant had the blindfold on, and Bernie the Bolt had to move the bow, and someone remotely would be saying left a bit, right a bit, up a bit, and they only had 60 seconds, and then it was fire. So, Nikki, it's time to press the phone on. Welcome back, everyone.
Right.
Everyone arrived back safely. Let's just check we've got no one missing. Are there still
Quite
still
a
some
few,
people in the
yes.
background?
There should be some people still returning.
Right. I'm just spotting Nikki hasn't got her video
I
on.
haven't got my video on because I'm doing stuff
No,
behind the scenes, I'm
other
afraid.
Nikki. No, it was
Oh,
other
right,
Nikki.
sorry.
Just while we're waiting for people to come back, how do you attach a file? I can't seem to attach a
Just
file.
you just copy and paste it into the chat bar. I've just sent you a reply, Amanda.
Copy and paste it. How do you copy and paste a file?
Oh, you can't add a file. You have to add a link to a file. We can't have great screeds of words going up, I'm afraid.
How do you add a link to the file if it's saved in your C drive?
That might be
copy
something
it.
you have to, that might be something you have to work out behind the scenes. If not, we can always send a link to it in the follow-up email when we
Right,
send it
so
to everyone.
moving swiftly on, we had 3 breakout rooms, so we've got 3 spokespeople. Now, I know Richard Casbolt is one. Can I just see a hand up? Who are the other 2? So there's Richard, and who else have we got?
We didn't actually organise anybody, but I'll go if
Right,
people
okay.
want me to, which I'm assuming most people will.
Thumbs
Right.
up to that,
We're
Jonathan.
still missing quite a few people.
I wonder whether there's a breakout room that's still broken out.
Well, let me have a look.
Also, Richard kindly passed the hospital pass to myself.
Very
so,
true, I did.
yeah,
I
you
passed it over to Philip.
Right.
Oh,
I'm closing all rooms again.
yeah.
So we've got, it looks like we may have lost some people from the
We
breakout
lost a
rooms
meeting room.
themselves.
Perhaps they've just absconded.
Well, exactly. They may have run away in fright. So breakout room 2, David Peddy, are you here?
I am.
You are. So your room, in theory, has
Yeah.
come back. So each room has come back, but we
Alright.
appear to have lost some people from the rooms in the process. So they may have had to go to other things.
Right, anyway, so we've got Richard, we've got Jonathan. Who else is a spokesman, or is it just the 2 we've got?
We didn't nominate anyone, so I don't know. Nikki, do you want to be?
Yeah, James, I'm not going to be doing it. It's Philip's going to do it.
Philip's going to do it. You've changed your mind. Oh, you changed your mind right at the last minute. Right. So, okay, so we'll go with Philip. Philip, thumbs up. Your burning issue for the panel.
Thank you. So our burning issue is one around timing and understanding what the thresholds are, the gates are to move through, and then the timescales associated with that. So we're not expecting to know what date will the lockdown end, but knowing that when we get through this point, then we're expecting 6 weeks of this, and then we're going to move through this point. Until we move through that point, it's going to be another 8 weeks, and just sort of a timeline of how things will unfold, so it allows us to actually make some valuable plans. We appreciate that will be slightly flexible, but it's about trying to understand what that timeline is and having transparency on it as well.
Yeah, Philip, that's a very good question. Just whilst Ian, Carl and Amanda are wondering how to reply, let me just mention on behalf of the IoD that to my mind, what you've just raised is indeed the burning issue. What's the exit plan? What's the timing? Because no one can sensibly plan for their business and their cash flow unless we as a country with appropriate political leadership have decided what we're doing and when. So, Ian, any thoughts on that burning issue?
I mean, you've got to, all I would say is you've got to remember just how long it takes to put formal funding in place, unless you want to go for the kind of, the sort of funding circle route, which I suspect is where most people will end up just because of the pure speed of the getting the cash in. But I mean, that would be my advice is always just keep those weekly cash flows going. It's all you can do, and keep talking to your customers and your suppliers. But I think if you want formal bank funding, then you need to be doing something now, and you need to be thinking about what state your accounts are in. Can you get your latest stat accounts done? Can you put a business review on there? And you've got to get that process started sooner rather than later. That would be
and
my
just
advice.
to challenge you on that, Ian,
Yeah.
if you've got no idea when your customers are going to place orders, how on earth do you do a realistic cash flow?
Well, you can still do a cash flow. You just got no income. So then the only thing you can then do is go to your suppliers and say, here's my cash flow. I can't pay you. So what can we do about it? Because they will say, right, okay, thanks for letting us know. Well, we can't do anything about it, can we? But what can I do to help, and what can you do to help us?
Right.
You are still speaking to a human being, and they will help you.
Lovely. That's a good comment, Ian. Carl, what are your thoughts on that burning issue?
Well, I think all we can focus on is our own timelines. I'm sure the IoD and other organisations will be lobbying the government to bring clarity as quickly as possible to what's a very uncertain situation. But what we as business owners and business leaders and business advisors can do is be clear about what our own timeline is in terms of when the pinch points are going to arise. And that comes back to the understanding the certainty and what are the uncertainties, so that as you approach any deadlines which your own predictions flag up, you're rethinking your process each time those deadlines come along. It's basic stuff. Control what you can control.
Lovely. Thank you, Carl. Amanda, have you got a thought on that?
I align 100% with what's been said thus far, but I would also add that it's important also to have a look at this to see whether there's an opportunity here, and also to have a look at how adaptable you can be as an organisation, as a company. So, for example, one of my clients, his business is corporate events and big events. So as you can imagine, his revenue's just literally gone off a cliff. So we're looking at how quickly they can adapt to potentially doing virtual events. So because I do believe that when we come through this as a society, it's going to look fundamentally different. So outside of the day-to-day cash flow management, outside of the day-to-day business management, it's perhaps an opportunity to sit back and say, okay, how do I need to adapt as an organisation? How do I need to change as an organisation? And can I do that? Can I be flexible? Are we agile? So no one can say how long this is going to be. I'd be very surprised if the government came back and said it's going to be this period of time, because we don't know how the virus is behaving necessarily. We're still learning. We haven't got a vaccine or a treatment. So part of being resilient is being positive, is looking for opportunity, is looking for, how can I make the best of this? So we don't have that exit. So I would just advise to try and look at it from a different perspective and say, right, I've got my day-to-day under control. How can I adapt? How can I be flexible? And where's my opportunity in this?
Amanda, can I come back to that, Amanda? Got a quick question on that one. Back again.
I'm not sure we've got time, actually,
Right,
Philip.
no worries.
I'm very sorry. We're on a tight schedule. So, Jonathan, what was your burning issue, if you would be so kind?
We may have misunderstood the guidelines. So we were looking at key takeaways. So I'll just run through those as quickly as I possibly can.
There's just one. Just give us one.
Okay. Be positive.
Be positive.
For you
That's
and
nice.
your staff and your clients, look for opportunities. What Amanda was saying, it's potentially a new world, but it's a new world now. There's loads of opportunity out there. Loads of opportunity. You've just got to persuade your clients and your staff that that's the way to go. To look at where can we pick up more business.
Right, I really like that one, Jonathan. Now, was there one other group that had a spokesman who wanted to say something? No? Good. So I think we're now moving on to the end of the show, so to say. Now, can everyone see that list of events coming up? Nikki, can everyone see that?
Yes, they certainly can, or they should be able to.
Do I need to widen it or not?
I think it's fairly clear on my screen.
Brilliant.
It will
Okay.
be saved for posterity on the video anyway, so people will be able to view those once the recording comes out.
Right, so just to run through these things. So the IoD is doing a lot of work down in Pall Mall, providing help for business as a coronavirus support hub, worth looking at for lots of useful information. The policy team at the IoD is hard at work lobbying number 11 and number 10. And I do think the burning issue from my perspective, whilst there can be no easy answers, it is when are we as a nation under our political leadership going to decide how and when we come out of lockdown? Because if we don't, I think there is going to be a terrible crisis coming. Our next weekly webinar, Wednesday the 29th of April, is on the critically important subject of building trust and effective communication in a COVID-stricken world. Then the following Wednesday, the 6th of May, strategic thinking to survive and thrive, the theory and the practice. So I mentioned that I was going to say a little bit about Sir John Lubbock. So Sir John was the founder of the Institute of Directors. It was founded in 1903. It got its Royal Charter in 1906, but it was in fact the second institute that Sir John had founded. The first he founded in 1878. He was the son of a banker and he went into the family banking business, and he formed the Institute of Bankers. The other interesting thing to note about Sir John is that his next door neighbour when he was a young child was Charles Darwin. So this guy was a real thinker, a really interesting guy, and he recognised that integrity and enterprise were utterly fundamental to a successful enterprise economy. So whenever I'm feeling I need to challenge myself, I remember this magnificent statue of three men in Birmingham. So the Golden Boys, as they're called. So we've discussed the Golden Nuggets, we've discussed the Golden Shot. These are the Golden Boys. So there were three men. James Watt. So this statue was erected just after the Second World War. The country on its knees, as soon I fear it is going to be again. James Watt invented the condensing chamber to the steam engine. Glaswegian. He walked down to Birmingham where he met Matthew Boulton. Matthew Boulton, brilliant salesman and entrepreneur, had the world's first manufactory in Birmingham. 500 people making fancy goods. He could immediately see the utility of the new improved steam engine. Took them 20 years to get that engine into the market. They could only do it because of the third man in the statue, William Murdoch, who was a brilliant project manager. And they created a brilliant steam engine company which drove the Industrial Revolution. I don't know whether that's Henry coming to cheer them on. It's not Henry.
No, I'm trying to find out who it might be. I've muted a few people just in
Right,
case.
so these are the guys who drove the Industrial Revolution. So we look over at Silicon Valley now and think they know all about it, but we knew as a country how to do it back in the late 1700s, early 1800s.
I'm so sorry. I'm trying to find who I might need to mute.
Could everyone mute, please?
Yeah. I think it's
Thank
Peak
you.
8621. Okay.
We'll,
I think we've got some silence now.
silence is golden.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, the problem I've got now, Nikki, I can't work out how to move it forward. Oh,
there we go.
Right, so we've decided that every week, having roused ourselves with the Golden Boys, we should have Sophie's Thought for the week. So we have Carl Tomlinson to thank for this one. So Carl is a great fan of Albert Camus. We learn in times of trial that there is more in humanity to admire than there is to despise. Wonderful words from Albert Camus. So that is all for this week. So it just remains for me to say, be bold, and for Nikki to say,
be safe.
Thank you all very much.
We'll see you next week. We will send out a recording of this along with a link to it, so you've got all the information that you've heard today to keep and treasure forever. And hopefully see you all next week. Thank you. Bye.